What's up, guys? Welcome to the Fantasy Addiction Network. In this video, we are taking a look and breaking down Russell Wilson, quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks, and looking at what we can expect from him in 2020 for fantasy football purposes. Now, I'll start this by saying when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks, there are certain teams when we're doing these breakdowns and just looking from a fantasy lens that we get pretty excited about. And then there's some teams that they just cause constant headaches. And the Seahawks are truly one of the headache-inducing teams because everyone that plays fantasy football and has watched what Russell Wilson has been able to do over the course of his career knows what he's capable of. And arguably, if you put Russell Wilson in a situation like Patrick Mahomes, like Lamar Jackson, I don't think there's really any argument that would say that Russell Wilson wouldn't produce just as much, if not better, than the top quarterbacks in the league. He's been incredibly efficient year in and year out, has played with poor offensive line and underrated receiving groups for pretty much the majority of his career, and has been able to be productive in the wake of all of that. And yet he's saddled with a team that continues to refuse to give him the ability to win the game with his arm. They want to continue to have this be a run-first team, and it's really frustrating to watch because we know what he could be, and we've seen it. He's had a year where he finishes the top quarterback in fantasy, and it's just hard to imagine him getting back there with the current coaching staff in Seattle. So last year he finished with 4,100 passing yards, 31 passing touchdowns, only 5 interceptions, 342 rushing yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns. That was good enough for fourth at the quarterback position with 333.5 fantasy points, averaging 20.8. When we look at his game-over-game stats, though, it gets a little bit uglier. So a good portion of his stats came from 6 blow-up games, or I guess 5 blow-up games, really. I don't really want to count week 17 in that. Other than that, though, I mean, anytime you hit below a quarterback 1, that's what all the yellow marks are, finishing outside of the top 12. I mean, that's not what you're looking for from a quarterback, because ideally in a redraft league where you're playing a single quarterback, you're trying to make sure you find a quarterback that hits the top 12 every week. That means that Russell Wilson was a guy that you probably would have been able to find a streaming option to outproduce him in the majority of weeks, which sucks. And it also is frustrating because when you have a guy that's capable of throwing up a 40 bomb in week 3, you probably started Russell Wilson for the remainder of the year chasing those big games, and he gave you a few more of them, but from week 9 onwards was a massive disappointment from a fantasy perspective. And it's not that he wasn't good, it's just this offense, this scheme with Brian Schottenheimer and Pete Carroll just refuses to let Russell Wilson be the fantasy god that he was destined to be. So last year, the Seahawks finished with 35.3 pass plays per game, which was 22nd in the NFL. He finished with 83 deep ball attempts, which was number 3 in the NFL, and he had a 39.8% deep ball accuracy, which was 12th. Finished with 33 money throws, which is number 2, and only 9 interceptable passes. So remember, he had 5 interceptions, only 9 interceptable passes. So for a guy that's throwing the ball deep down the field 83 times, only has 9 interceptable passes, like that's just an absolute absurd stat. 110.9 true passer rating, which is number 4 in the NFL, 0.51 fantasy points per drop back, and 4.7 carries per game. Now, he doesn't necessarily produce the same number of yards that he was earlier in his career. The yards per carry has dipped a little bit, and he also hasn't been running as much, and he has never really been a quarterback that stole a lot of touchdowns, so he doesn't give you the same upside that some of the other running quarterbacks give you. But again, he provides incredible upside in the passing game. It's just, guys, I'm sorry, I get frustrated talking about Russell Wilson because I would love to see what he could do if he played on a team with a coach like Andy Reid that just let him do his thing. It would be amazing. Now, let's talk a little bit about the changes to the team before we get into the projections for the year, because that there is at least some hope that maybe this is the year that they turn things over. I'm not betting on it because I don't assume rational coaching with Carroll and Schottenheimer. I would love to, but they've given us no reason to actually assume that they're rational at this point. So as it stands right now, the Seahawks faced the third hardest strength of schedule against the run. They had some shakeups to their offensive line. They saw Justin Britt, DJ Fluker, and German Ifedi all leave. So their offensive line is going to be a little bit different and arguably a little bit weaker. They add Philip Dorsett, they add Greg Olsen, so give Russell Wilson additional deep field stretcher with Philip Dorsett and another reliable tight end option who Russell Wilson has been incredibly efficient with tight ends over the course of time. All those signs should point for Russell Wilson to have an incredibly efficient season. And then you bring in the fact that Chris Carson is dealing with a hip fracture that he had surgery on last year. Rashad Penny is going to be out, most likely going to start the season on PUP and won't even come back until over half of the season is over. But they bring in Carlos Hyde, who another team that we've despised the coaching regime for fantasy football comes from Houston and comes over to Seattle. Like Carlos Hyde has been the bane of running back existence for a while. So this is probably just going to continue being a run plotting team, even though from a analytics standpoint, from a strength of schedule standpoint, from a Russell Wilson is a freaking beast standpoint, it doesn't make sense for them to continue to do that. So if you want to take a bet on Russell Wilson seeing an increase to his passing volume and it happens, like you're going to cash in those chips. If Russell Wilson was playing on a team that actually used him in the way that they should and appropriately valued him, then Russell Wilson would arguably be in the same tier as Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. But he comes at a discount because he plays on a team that you can't reasonably expect that to happen. So what does this mean from a projection standpoint? Well, we'll get into that. We have him pretty close to where he finished last year with passing yards, 4,172, 30 passing touchdowns. We do expect his interceptions to go up a little bit. Last year was insane efficiency, but I mean, the guy's really good. So perhaps that's a little bit too mean. Finishing with about 318 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. So essentially where he finished last year, which probably means that you're going to be disappointed because he's going to have those blow up games that gives you the excitement that you want to start him every single week. And then he puts up some weeks where you're just disgusted with the points that he put up because they just don't refuse to use him. So essentially where I feel with Russell Wilson is you have to make a bet and say, okay, is he going, like, are the Seahawks going to be forced into a situation where they have to throw the ball more? And if they are, no matter where you take Russell Wilson, you're getting him out of value. But if he plays the way that he did last year, which was really good, but the offense is similar in terms of run to pass volume, it's not going to bode well for where he's going in drafts right now. I guess one more point of order is to note that, with the anticipated loss of Jadeveon Clowney, I know he's still a free agent. He could still technically sign in Seattle. Maybe that'll hurt their defense as well and put them into some more shootouts. So if their defense is a bit weaker, offensive line is a bit weaker, a lot of reasons for you to take a narrative and say that, okay, Russell Wilson is going to see more work. And if he does, I guarantee you're going to be happy where you drafted him. But if he doesn't, you're going to be disappointed. So he's one of the rare players where there's literally only an upside and a downside scenario. I don't really see there being any middle ground. You're either going to be massively disappointed that they're not using him more, or incredibly ecstatic that you got a quarterback of his caliber as late as you did in the draft. And there's really no middle ground. So however you guys feel, I feel like I've laid out the case for both angles for him, where he's either an incredible value or a draft day avoidance, and you guys will have to flip a coin and decide whether or not you think the Seahawks are going to actually give him the run that he needs to be the fantasy producer that he should be, or if it's going to be another disappointing year for him. So that's my take. Hit me up in the comment section and let me know what you guys think. Hit that subscribe button for more videos like this one. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you in the next video.